A reading from A Track to the Water's Edge, the Olive Schreiner reader. For what do I go to this far land which no one has ever reached? Oh, I am alone. I am utterly alone.
And Reason, that old man, said to her, Silence. What do you hear?
And she listened intently, and she said, I hear a sound of feet, 1,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, and they beat this way.
He said, They are the feet of those that shall follow you. Lead on. Make a track to the water's edge. Where you stand now, the ground will be beaten flat by 10,000 times 10,000 feet. And he said, Have you seen the locusts, how they cross a stream? First, one comes down to the water's edge, and it is swept away. And then another comes, and then another, and then another, and at last, with their bodies piled up, a bridge is built, and the rest pass over.
She said, And of those that come first, some are swept away and are heard of no more. Their bodies do not even build the bridge.
And are swept away, and are heard of no more. And what of that? He said.
And what of that? She said.
They make a track to the water's edge.
And she said, Over that bridge which shall be built with our bodies, who will pass?
And he said, The entire human race.
And the woman grasped her staff, and I saw her turn down that dark path to the river. Please be seated. I begin with a story about myself and a person who is well known to some of you, though not all. Many of you will remember John Burris, newly ordained, who worked as a youth minister at Church of Holy Communion for a number of years. When John and I became acquainted, we were both working as youth ministers. Now, John was the rock star of the diocese when it came to youth, and I was the newbie, in spite of my advanced age, struggling to live into a kind of ministry I never in 100 years expected. It was definitely a case of the younger teaching the elder, and I will be forever grateful for John's patient endurance of my ineptitude. Eventually, we became very good colleagues and joined forces on a number of occasions, including taking middle schoolers to the Heifer Ranch in Arkansas. Our most memorable collaboration, though, was a mission trip to New Orleans to rebuild houses in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. To commemorate that trip, John designed a t-shirt, a navy blue background with a cityscape alongside the river, music notes rising and a huge yellow moon, and footprints leading to the water. The name of our mission was A Track to the Water's Edge. All 40 or so of us on that trip understood that there was no way for our group to fix everything that was broken in New Orleans. But we were willing to do our part, to make tracks, if you will, to the very edge of that unruly Mississippi River. Since that trip, back in June of 2007, all those teenagers have grown up, been to college, graduated, and are well into their professional careers. John went off to seminary, was ordained, and now is serving as vicar of Church of the Annunciation in Cordova. As for me, I'm Calvary's boomerang priest who left and came back and is here from the look of things for the duration. But John Burris and I have crossed paths again. And along with Chris and many other faithful people from his congregation in Cordova and from Calvary and beyond, we are still making tracks. This time it's not a city in ruins that draws us, but lives in ruins. Particularly the lives of women who have survived unspeakable abuse. Some, if you can believe this, some actually sold into the sex trade. Others who were lured by a dream that turned out to be a nightmare. Some the casualties of desperate circumstances and broken safety nets. Many of these women have been to jail. Most of them have addiction issues. And all of them have suffered rape and exploitation, sometimes for the first time in childhood. But now there is a movement afoot to restore these survivors to dignity, to provide them with opportunities to discover, sometimes for the very first time in their lives, their inherent worth, strength, and beauty. Calvary Church and Church of the Annunciation are a part of this movement. Started by another Episcopal priest, Becca Stevens, in Nashville 17 years ago. She started with one house, 5 women, the seeds of what is now a model that has been shown to work and is being replicated in cities across the country: New Orleans, St. Louis, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and others. Here in Memphis, there is now 4 women, 1 house, where these women are receiving care and support for whatever woundedness they carry. Now, why, you might be curious to know, why does this particular model work? And of course, there are many factors that go into building a successful program, but one crucial key, in my estimation, is the use of defining values that are inherently subversive, that are so countercultural. And what are those values? Non-judgmental love and radical hospitality. Furthermore, because healing requires economic wholeness in addition to physical, mental, and spiritual, there is, right here in Memphis, in Cordova actually, 1 tiny little herb garden and 3 beehives. We are the Friends of Thistle Farms, and our aim is to make tea and honey for a cause. We are committed to the support of vulnerable women in their journey from isolation to community, from addiction to recovery, from poverty to financial stability. And in the business we hope to create, we are committed to a paradigm, again, so countercultural, a paradigm based on collaboration over competition. Now, this is a tall order. Impossible, you might be thinking. But friends, I am here to tell you that God is not shy about asking impossible things of us. God called Moses to be the liberator of his people. And for all of his limitations, his age, Moses was 80 when that burning bush came In spite of his age, his stutter, his lack of political power, the contentiousness of the people he had been called to lead, Moses did, in fact, face off with the most powerful king in the ancient world. And the people, slaves in Egypt for 400 years, did indeed walk away from their bondage. Of course, their escape from Pharaoh was just the beginning. It would take a long time and many failures. All the fights, the rebellions, getting lost, wandering around, and complaining about everything under the sun. It would take a long time for them to learn how to be free. And Moses, for all of the Hollywood-style theatrics we associate with him, would discover that God can be frustratingly evasive when it comes to an actual plan. Show me your ways, Moses pleads with God in today's Old Testament lesson. God has instructed Moses to take the people even deeper into the wilderness on their way to the promised land. But Moses, weary and fed up after the golden calf debacle, Moses wants answers. He wants a clear step-by-step instruction book for how to get those stiff-necked Israelites from where they are to where God wants them to be. What he gets, though, is a dodge. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. I can only imagine Moses in exasperation throwing up his hands and saying, "What kind of answer is that?" So he tries again. "Well, if you won't show me your ways, then show me your glory. Give me a sign, in other words. Dazzle me. Give me something to go on." We've all been there, haven't we? Just tell me what you want, Lord. Show me what to do. God calls. We respond as best we can, but this call business is tricky, for hardly ever does it come with an action plan. God seems to expect that we assume responsibility for figuring out the how of whatever it is we've been asked to do. God expects us, in other words, to be grown-ups. Frankly, I don't know for sure where Friends of Thistle Farms is going. And I certainly can't say what your unique and particular calling is, but here's what I do know. As people of faith, we are called, every last one of us, to fall deeply, hopelessly, passionately in love with the one who loved us first. And out of that connection to the life-giving source of all love, we are called to give it away again so that all of us, not just some of us, can have the abundant life God created for us in the first place. Here at Calvary, we can. I believe this. Here at Calvary, we can, along with our partners in Cordova and anyone else who wants to come along with us, we can make that trek to the water's edge. Reasonable people may tell us that we're wasting our time. No doubt some of our efforts will be swept away. But I am convinced that we are building a bridge, and over that bridge, some will cross. maybe many will cross over to nothing less than the promised land.